Religious are really, really bad at sharing the gospel. I think we know that already. Talking about your imaginary friend to people who have absolutely zero interest in listening, that rarely leads to a good end. Yet they tend to persist, don't they? Instead of realizing just how dumb it makes them look, they'd rather still blather on about their magical wizard people in the sky. Maybe they ought to knock that off. I am not a fan of Paul Washer. Never have been, never will be. He, like most other apologists, they just rub me the wrong way, but sometimes you just have to grit your teeth and look at what they're saying. Otherwise, how will you ever be able to show just how wrong they are? This is a question and answer session at some religious seminar of some kind, I don't really know, where Paul and a bunch of other apologists are just up on a stage fielding questions from the audience. And this is one of them. And Paul does a really, really, really bad job of providing an actual answer. Because that's a surprise. So let's go watch.
So I was saved about 2 years ago from, atheism, and I have a pretty atheistic family. And so I've been trying to share the gospel with them ever since I was saved. And just finally, recently, I'm engaged in a conversation with my sister, and she's wanting to get into a discussion about evidence. And I'm just curious if you guys could touch on, should I engage in that or not? If not, at what point do you draw the line? And I've listened to sermons on not casting your pearls before swine, so I'm just kind of lost as to where to go from here.
Well, that was a reasonably long question, wasn't it? Which is fine, but I call dibs and get to answer first. My channel, my rules. I think this question betrays a lot of problems with the mindset of the religious, and this is why they don't get anywhere intelligent at all. First off, I'm going to say that if you are interested in engaging with anyone and you have time to do so, absolutely you should go ahead. Engaging with others is how you learn stuff, or at least if you're open to it, which is why the religious do so poorly. They don't want to learn nothing. They just want to preach. They want to tell you what to think instead of providing evidence that their ideas are rationally valid. So yes, by all means, go ahead and engage. But don't engage if you want to show just how great you are or how perfect your beliefs are. You are not going to get anywhere like that, and everybody on the other side is just going to roll their eyes. So let's see what Paul has to say on the matter.
Any sincere question, any sincere, genuine question deserves a sincere answer.
I would agree with that. Now, how do you decide if the question is sincere? Again, we do see this all the time. You only have to look at the theists in my own comment section to see that clearly. They will say, well, you're wrong about that. Great. Show me where I'm wrong and how you know that I'm wrong. Produce your corroboratory evidence. And that never ever goes well, does it? How do you know I'm wrong if you have no means whatsoever to show that you're right, or any means whatsoever to show that I'm wrong? And this is insanely common. It just happened again as I write this, where somebody said that Alvin Plantinga had come up with some new arguments for God. And this is in relation to my statement that they don't come up with anything new. Well, great, I said. I'm not aware of anything new that Plantinga, or any other apologist for that matter, has come up with. So go ahead and point to these new arguments, and I'd be happy to check them out. And I think we all know what came next. Well, I'm not here to educate you. Okay, then why'd you bring it up in the first place? You were counting on me not knowing who the hell Alvin Plantinga was. Yet I do. I'm very familiar with him and his arguments, and I am not remotely impressed. If you think that I'm wrong, that's fine, but it's on your shoulders to back that up. Go ahead. Nope, he just started throwing around insults and ran away, because that's what they do. Hardly a surprise anymore, is it?
But know this, that all the answers from science, culture, whatever, is not going to convert her. It's going to be the gospel.
Then, you're kind of screwed up, aren't you? This is why people like Greg Koukl and his merry band of idiots that stands against reason fare so poorly. They know that their students are going to fail because they can't actually show that anything in the gospel is real. They believe it, they have faith in it certainly, they want it to be true, but on the evidence side, they've got absolutely nothing and they know it. Therefore, they spend all of their time preparing for failure while making excuses why it just isn't their fault. I don't think Paul here is really any different, but let's see.
Always go to the gospel, the gospel, the gospel. How does a man... Let me give you an example. There's a brother I know in the mountains of Peru. He was pagan Catholic, which is, as many of you know in Latin America, it's a mixture of a paganism and a Catholicism. The whole village was.
And that's very true. He got that one right. I didn't want you to think that I was just going to bash on this guy for the entire video without reason. If he's right, he's right. I figure he's going to say enough stupid stuff as it is that I don't have to take any cheap shots, but here's where he's going to go wrong right off the bat, I figure. He's just assuming that he's right without being able to back it up. But it's in the Bible. God says this. God does this. Yeah, okay, but you're not talking to people who hold the position on faith like you do. He's in front of a Christian audience, spewing a Christian message, blissfully unaware of what happens when you get out in the real world. Now, Paul doesn't have to deal with any of that. He's not doing it himself any more than Greg Koukl is. They've got your money already. They don't have to actually back anything up. It doesn't matter if what they say is true. So he's in the middle of his story about Peru. Whether or not the story is true, I guess it doesn't really matter. We already know that a lot of these stories are just made up for effect, but I guess in this instance, we'll just take him at his word. So what's your point, Paul? Let's get to it.
One day, a little man, unimpressive, came in there and shared a gospel message. Immediately, this man believed.
That doesn't mean that he should have. People believe stupid stuff for bad reasons all the time. I mean, look at everybody on the stage. Just because this guy supposedly bought into the unsupported arguments, and granted we weren't there, we don't know exactly what was said, that doesn't make any of it true. Remember, we're looking at people who are already religious, and it's not at all hard to believe that somebody could chuck one ridiculous woo-woo belief for another. That's not especially hard to do. But the question at hand was about atheism and more particularly about evidence. How much do you want to bet that nothing Paul says in any of this is going to address that?
The next day, the whole village got together and they were going to, it's a thing they will do for punishment, they were going to bathe him in boiling water if he didn't recant. Now, I want you to think about something. He hears a message that contradicts his entire tribe, his entire village of people. He hears it from a little unimpressive poor man who only stammeringly shares the gospel for 30 minutes. Yet in that moment, he comes to believe that Jesus is the Christ resurrected from the dead and that salvation is by faith. He never read evidence that demands a verdict. He knows nothing about Van Tilian apologetics. No reasons to believe were given to him. Nothing about who moved the stone. There was nothing. It was the gospel message. How is it that with that small thing, he's now willing to die for his faith?
Because he's an idiot. We can find the exact same story of people who have been converted from Christianity to other religions and who face retribution from their own communities. This is incredibly common when you look at, say, Islam. You convert to anything else and you're very likely dead. It doesn't even have to be Christianity. You could become a Buddhist or a Hindu and your ass is grass. That doesn't say much for the religious mindset, does it? These are people who are pathetically uncomfortable with any disconformity, right? Everybody has to be just like us. That's just not a recommendation for your religion. It's just proof that there's something seriously wrong with you people.
I think John Calvin, one of his greatest contributions in theology was to answer that question using Scripture, that it was the work of the Spirit of God testifying to the truth of the message, illuminating his heart and regenerating him.
No, that guy was an idiot. This is how you're rationalizing objections away. Remember, we don't even know if this story is true. We have absolutely no corroboration that it ever happened, and I guess really in this instance, I don't really care. But you notice that he's not actually answering the question, right? He's going off on a tangent somewhere and pretending that his magical spook in the sky will take care of it, but that's demonstrably not true. When the original questioner gets home and talks to his sister, he's going to get slaughtered because atheists, we don't tend to fall for this crap. You are sending him in with bad expectations, and he's going to get his backside metaphorically kicked. It might be fun to watch from the outside, but Washer, he's not doing anybody any favors.
So that should be your concentration. Speaking forth the gospel, demonstrating the gospel to your family.
And how the hell do you think he's going to do that? Because here's another problem that the religious tend to have. They are really convinced that they have evidence, but they don't know what the hell that word means. It just sounds good to those on the inside, and that's what they're all counting on. It's just that when they get to the outside world, the real world, these claims of evidence, they don't work at all. Because what you have, it's not evidence. It's just empty claims that you yanked out of a book of mythology that you happen to like, but that don't stand up to any kind of rational evaluation in reality. And that's why they fail so much. But so long as they can come up with a bald rationalization that makes it seem like they're not to blame, who cares about that? They sure don't. They made a good faith effort, and now it's in the hands of God. Is it any wonder that Christianity is in free fall today? I really don't think so.
Which means if you try to share with them and they say no, do not badger them. Do not give them a reason to say, look what he's become, a fanatical person who just badgers us and judges us. No, seek to share the gospel with them. If they say we don't want to hear it, stop.
If only it worked out that way in practice. Now, I know I've told this story before, but I have, or at least I had, I don't know, it's been many years since I've seen them, but I at least had family members who were so on fire for the Lord that I'm pretty surprised they didn't just start brush fires by standing there. They were absolutely incapable of keeping their religion to themselves, and in so doing, they drove absolutely everybody in their lives away. I saw them bothering people in the line at the grocery store trying to share the gospel. They didn't care, and they couldn't figure out why absolutely nobody in the family wanted to be around them. And this is really far too common. I've been bothered plenty of times, again, at the grocery store as an example, just out of the blue. I saw some guy in a parking lot standing in the back of his truck screaming Bible verses at everybody who passed. These people, they've got problems. Some of them probably certifiably, but they don't seem to understand just how awful they actually are. They think that it's their job to spout unsupportable crap because it makes them happy. It just makes everybody else laugh at them, but hey, it makes them happy, so who cares? This is why religion is dying in the Western world. Because you people are idiots. Figure it out.
And serve them and love them and bless them, not in a way in which you're trying to draw attention to yourself, but out of a sincere heart. If she has an honest question, like, what about evolution? You can answer that question.
But only in a way that shows what a complete wingnut you are. The religious, they don't have any actual answers. They just have wishful thinking. We want actual answers. Answers supported by evidence. Answers that can be backed up with more than faith. They can't see themselves in the mirror as other people see them. They're just like the UFO nutballs and the tinfoil hats who think that absolutely everything they say is perfectly reasonable. They lack the capacity to step back and evaluate their beliefs critically and from a position of evidence and rationality. They don't care any more than the Christians do, any more than the Muslims do, any more than the flat earthers do. These are just crazy people. Let's stop pretending otherwise.
But not thinking that by answering all her questions, you're going to bring her to Christ. It is the power of the gospel. It is always the power of the gospel. And I love what Spurgeon and others have said, with the scriptures. You don't have to defend the scriptures any more than you have to defend a lion. Let him out of the cage, he'll defend himself.
Yeah, but the lion is real. That's where all of these idiot theists go wrong. God isn't demonstrably real. God doesn't demonstrably do anything. Well, let's let God take care of it. Sure, but when has that ever demonstrably happened? I mean, that you can prove. Because we're right back to absolutely any religion can do the same thing. Any religion can say, well, my God will provide. And the second that something happens that they can interpret as confirmation, you'll get, see, I was right all along. Of course, that's no indication that any God actually done it. It's just blind confirmation bias and wishful thinking. Well, of course it was my God. Really? How do you know that? Well, I just do. It's just childish, but then again, look at who we're talking about.
Let me give you one other example. I remember I was on a plane having a wonderful conversation with this unbelieving man, and then I said, can I take the next few minutes and share with you the gospel, my faith?
Sure, while you've got a captive audience, why not? Now, this is something else that I've seen a lot, and I don't know if they intended it this way or not, just that I've seen it on numerous occasions. The religious will choose to share their faith at times, specifically when the non-believer can't get away, or especially when it would be socially awkward for the non-believer to openly mock the believer. Like, I don't know, maybe being on a plane, for instance, where you don't want to raise your voice or make a fuss. If you go back to the movie Airplane, where Robert Hayes is explaining his life story to people who are just sitting next to him and they're offing themselves in the most humorous ways to get away from it, that's kind of what's going on. However, let's listen to his story because I'm sure it's going to be no more impressive than the last one.
And he turned in just one moment, no, I don't want to hear anything about your religion.
That's actually kind of surprising. Now, I bet he was older in that case, assuming any of this ever happened at all. I can only speak for myself, of course, but I'm like that too. I have absolutely no interest in hearing about your imaginary friends in any situation where I can't respond reasonably. Of course, the real question here is, did Paul respect that and just shut his mouth, or did he just keep going anyhow? Some do, some don't, and you can never really tell which one you're going to get. I hope he did at least. Let's find out.
Now, if I was really zealous, I would have kept going, right? And I said, okay. Now, what was it you were saying about your sister and I kept talking with him. I kept serving him. And you know what happened? He got up. Now, if I would have badgered him, what would he have done? He'd have got off the plane, got his bags, met with his other friends at the bar there during the layover and said, I was badgered by one of those fanatical evangelicals. Gosh, it was horrible. I'm glad I got off that plane.
Well, at least he shut up. That's a couple points for his side. I've had experiences where the theists, they just wouldn't stop. You know, the people who can't go 2 minutes without mentioning Jesus 147 times. Those are the people you don't want to be sitting next to on a plane. And those are the people who, if you wind up in the bar, you're going to be complaining about. Those are the people who make Christianity look bad. Well, worse, it already looks bad no matter what. At least some people can recognize what they're doing wrong. So, you know, credit where credit is due.
But because I didn't do that, he got up before me. He was actually sitting on this side. He got up in the aisle. He got his bag, was getting ready to leave. I was still here. And he took one step and he stopped. And he turned around and he said, I am so sorry.
No, he didn't. This is just a tale meant to push a narrative. We've seen the same kind of thing from Frank Turek and many, many other apologists who always seem to have a convenient story that'll fit any occasion. I don't buy it, and I don't think you should either. These stories always come off as self-serving. Even if this did happen, I'm not saying that I think it did or that it didn't, but even if so, it means absolutely nothing because it's cherry-picked for effect. Why don't they tell the stories of people who just told him to shut up and leave him alone? The people who stand up and ask the flight attendant to get him a different seat because this asshole is harassing them. Why don't we ever get those stories? We all know that they happen, right?
I'm so sorry. I had no reason to be that way with you.
Yes, you do. Here's this random guy on a plane, an uncomfortable place already, who is trying to proselytize to you. Maybe in this instance, at least if you believe the story, Paul Washer backed down, but he shouldn't have tried to begin with. That goes for absolutely everybody. I don't want somebody to start talking politics on a plane either. I don't want you to try pushing an ideology at all. An empty conversation about unimportant things, maybe that's fine. I'm okay with that. Anything more, and I'm bowing out. I've got better things to do than talk to complete strangers about their lives. Because I just don't care.
Do you see? And you want to, we have a lot of college students, and one of the things I always have to tell them, look, you've been converted, and now you're saying to me, your parents have gone to church for 25 years, and you don't think they're Christians and everything. Let's talk about how you're going to act when you get home. You are going to not come in there like some zealot. You are going to come in there and share your faith. Mom, Dad, look at this, what happened to me. And then you're going to serve them, humble yourself before them, be more obedient than they could ever imagine you would be. And they're going to start asking you, tell us more about this faith of yours.
No, they're not. So let's change this just a little bit to fit the current crowd. I, as an atheist, I am not interested in your faith. You can be the nicest person in the world, and I am still not going to care about your faith. I am going to think that you are an idiot no matter what you do. You could be a really nice idiot, but you're still an idiot because you believe stupid things. The same thing goes for, say, a flat earther. They can be the kindest person that I've ever met, but I'm still going to think they're a moron the second that they bring up the flat earth. Bigfoot enthusiasts, UFO fanatics, it doesn't really matter. What's the old saying? Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak out and remove all doubt? The religious think internally that they're being reasonable, but more and more often these days, that is just not true. More people are realizing just how asinine Christianity is. And to be fair, that goes for all religious beliefs. If you open your mouth and say, I believe in Jesus Christ, that's really no different than saying, I believe I'm a purple unicorn. you are out of your mind. And the second that you tell me that you're out of your mind, which is really what you're doing, I lose all interest in having any kind of intelligent conversation with you. So, getting back to the original question, which, let's be honest, Paul never really answered, how do you convince your non-religious parents that religion is reasonable? The same way you would do it with anybody else. You have evidence. You present a case that your gods are actually real and have something demonstrable to back it up. If you can't, then you're just wasting everybody's time, including your own. That's the standard. Meet it or shut up. Things are only going to get more difficult for you because God isn't going to be an automatically acceptable explanation for crap that you don't understand anymore. It might have been once upon a time, but today you're out of luck. It's why Christianity and other religions are dying. And good riddance to them.